Hi everyone, I just have a little point I would like to make about fire steels, ferrocerium rods. That is, using a ferrocerium rod or fire steel is, in my opinion, or at least my experience, a perishable skill. I once went to an extended period of time not being able to go out very often and practice my firelighting skills with a ferrocerium rod. And over that period, it might have been 6 months, I noticed a massive drop in my proficiency using a ferro rod. In fact, that is the level I was at when I started doing videos at YouTube. I sucked royally when I started doing videos. Now, I used to be able to get 1 spark fires. Then I went an extended period not practicing because my situation kind of inhibited practicing outdoor skills. In that time, I went from being able to easily do a 1 spark fire to kind of sucking pretty bad. Well, at least in my opinion, I sucked pretty bad. Now I'm back up to 1 spark fires are no big deal. With my Opnil carbon, 1 spark fire, not that big of a deal. Normally the most it will take me is about 3 sparks. If I did more than 5, I would be a bit concerned. Unless of course I had marginal tinder, or it was raining, or if I had ideal tinder and actually prepped it properly and used my ferro rod right, 1 spark, not that big of a deal. So the thing I kind of want to rant about is all these people who have a fire steel for a survival kit or a bug out bag, but they never use it. They go, oh, I have a fire steel, I can make fire with that. I got 2,000 sparks. That's 2,000 fires. Yet you have never used it before and probably could not get away with using just natural tinders. If you're using a fire steel and you always use pre-made tinders, Vaseline and cotton balls, personally, I think you're kidding yourself. In my opinion, pre-made tinders are for a last resort, or if conditions you're in are not very good for lighting a fire with natural tinders that you find on the trail. Now, it's not so bad to carry a bag of tinder that you've collected. Say I could get a Ziploc bag and fill it with really nice paper bark every time I see a really good example of really dry, really fibrous, really dead paper bark just hanging there, or hell, sometimes when it's really dry, even on the ground. I've got nothing against people who have a bag just full of natural tinder they find all over the place. But to be honest, I don't even do that. I think I might do it for bow drill and stuff, my friction fire tinder, just because I want that little bit of an extra edge. But honestly, I just take my Opnil and my ferro rod and I walk out into the bush, and I have no problem lighting a fire with just that, because I have I'd like to say a pretty good working knowledge of tinders in my area, which is a perishable skill. If you don't go out and practice that, you get rusty. And my experience has been I got rusty pretty quick. Although I am at a much higher level than I think I was before I went through that period of, not practicing. I'm probably at the highest skill level I've ever been for using a ferro rod. Now, a couple of people will probably roll in, yeah, but you can't use a ferro rod, you push down on it. Everybody seems to have their own opinion on whether you pull the ferro rod back or if you push the striker forwards. Now, if you're going to flick it out, that's kind of really not too good. But if you hold it and you just that's slightly better. The argument people make is you might hit your tinder. Now, I have done that. I've got video of me doing that, like with my one-handed ferro rod attempt, which I did get it going, you know, but moving the knife towards the tinder, in that situation, not a good idea. I hit it. Oh well. However, normally when I prep a tinder bundle and I strike down into it, I don't have that problem because I've done it so many times that I don't hit my tinder. And more importantly, the way I've started using my ferro rod now, I kind of want to drive the sparks down into the tinder. So I'm going straight down. I'm not going to knock my tinder all over the place. I'm going straight down into it, or on a very steep angle. Because what I'm doing, the way I use my ferro rod now, is I basically try to push those sparks directly into the tinder. Now, when you pull back on your ferro rod, the sparks go everywhere. That's not ideal. But with pushing it forwards, driving the sparks into the tinder, I personally find that I have much more control over where the sparks go. I can focus them in on a point, concentrate them on that area, and, you know, get a fire going pretty easily. But to be honest, I should probably break methods for using ferro rods into its own video. This is just kind of my little rant on ferro rods. So yeah, people with ferro rods who have them in their survival kits and they have never used them, my advice is get out and use them. It's something you really need to practice with. Now, a lot of people will carry a ferro rod, but they'll use their lighter. They've got their ferro rod as a backup. Again, my advice is start using the ferro rod as your primary way of making a fire. So what I do, I have no problem getting a fire started with a ferro rod. It's getting pretty easy. But if you lose your lighter and you then have to mess around with your ferro rod and you're rusty because you haven't used it in a year, that's going to be a serious pain. Or at least I reckon it probably would be, based on my own experience. So yeah, ferro rods are a perishable skill. They're worth using. If you want to rely on it, my suggestion is keep using it. Kind of gets me to these tiny little ferro rods people want to sell. You know, we want to make our ferro rod tiny so it's really lightweight and tactical. It's ferrocerium. It's kind of worth carrying the weight of one of those Swedish fire steel army sized ones. If you're going to get one, get the army. It's better value for money in terms of ferrocerium weight versus price. It'll last longer. And to be honest, it's a few little grams. It's not going to make that big of a deal. Now, with the ultralight guys might roll in and say, you know, grams turn to kilos, blah blah blah, or what is it, ounces turn to pounds. It's ferrocerium. It's kind of worth the weight. Now, you might not want to go to the ridiculous extreme of getting a 12-inch long, half-inch thick ferro rod blank like I did. I just did that because I'm a bit eccentric. You know, I thought it would be hilarious to have a gigantic ferro rod. You don't need to go that far. To be honest, my ferro rod has been lasting me ages, and I use this thing. This is pretty much all I use, and it's lasting quite a long time. Probably because I'm at the point with my skill set where it only takes 1 to 3 sparks on average. You know, on a bad day I'll probably take more. I mean, if I've got really dodgy tinder, or I just can't be bothered to prep it properly, or, you know, moisture in the air, blah blah blah. There's so many variables, but, you know, on a good day, 1 to 3 sparks, no big deal. So yeah, it's lasting for ages because I just don't use that many sparks to get fire going. Now, where was I? Just wanted to put out there that little rant that's been going around in my head for a while about people with ferro rods who carry them but don't use them, or they carry them and use them but they always use pre-made tinder. Seriously, it's worth learning to use the tinders in your area. Or at least I think it is. It's probably why that's what I do. Because, you know, people reckon, oh, it only takes me 1 spark with a cotton ball and Vaseline. And this is good for 2,000 sparks. I'm good for 2,000 fires. Yeah, but you've only got 15 to 20 of those cotton balls. So how many fires do you really think you've got if you can't light a fire with natural tinders in your area? That's not to say that it's a bad idea to carry pre-made tinders. I mean, by all means, carry a backup. It's your life. It's in your hands. I am not going to tell you to not carry pre-made tinders. If you want to have that backup, go for it. It's not a bad idea. Personally, I don't, but I think it's a good idea. I think it's probably a good idea to carry it. I just don't, because, well, I'm just at that point where I think the last time I used a cotton ball to get a fire going was about 2 years ago, and that was just as a demonstration. That's just where I'm at. Hell, I'd like to go out and practice using these things in the rain. When I get rain, that is. It doesn't rain that much around here. We get really good rain every couple of years. But, you know, not that big of a deal. Oh, and a little tip for ferro rods, attach them to your keys. In fact, that is such a good tip, I should probably break that out into its own video. If you're taking your car out to go bush, you know, you're driving to the park or wherever it is you go, I'm not going to be driving here without my keys. And if I lose my keys while I'm out bush, well, I got a serious problem other than, you know, the fact that I lost my ferro rod. I mean, it's going to be a pain. And I'll have to go look for my keys anyway. You know, I do have videos of me using things other than a ferro rod, such as I think I did a satay, creamy satay crocodile, and I used unmatched to get my fire started. You know, the old classic training challenge of getting a fire going, 1 match, no big deal, unless you start the match. But yeah, that is. If I had the ferro rod on my keychain, no problem. And it has happened a few times that I've gone out and I've forgotten my ferro rod. Oops! Oh well, I'm not perfect. Don't claim to be, don't pretend to be. Alright guys, I hope it didn't bore you too much with my little rant. You know, I just thought it would be, I just felt it was worth saying, if you're going to carry a ferro rod, you should probably learn how to use the thing. I see a lot of people who have ferro rods as a backup with some pre-made tinder, and I just think they might have some difficulty actually using the thing when push comes to shove. Just wanted to, you know, vent a little. Just give my 2 cents on ferro rod. Alright everyone, see yous.